There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to another vlog. This one is going to be about catching up on stuff that I just didn't have the wherewithal to fit into my Friday reads because I was so overwhelmed by and obsessed with the book that I finished that was a life-changing read, Collected Works by Lydia Sandgren, translated from the Swedish by Agnes Broom. I had started about 8 books that week, and I had barely read 10 pages of any of them, and just said, get to hell with it. I'm not going to check in on all those 8 books on the first 7 or 6.5 pages. So here I am. I'm going to try to catch up and take you around. I don't know how far from home I'm going to get over the next 3 days, but I'm going to try to go a little bit farther afield because I know that I've certainly realized that I haven't shown you very much of the city where I live. So I'm now sitting in the general area out back, the wilderness that's connected to the golf course, and I found a shady spot because I brought my chair and I feel very comfortable here that I'm not interrupting anybody and it's quiet. So here I am, and the first I'm going to talk maybe about 4 books today, and in order for this not to be a 90-minute vlog, I'm going to be a little briefer than usual, but at least give you a sense of some of the ongoing books and some of my bails and this and that. So I do have one bail today, but let me tell you about the audiobook that I started the week before, and that is Everybody in This Room Will Soon... I can't remember the exact title. Everybody in This Room Will Someday Be Dead. Something like that, by Emily Austin, a Canadian lesbian author. This book, all I'd really heard about it was that it had a weird protagonist, and then I did a bite-sized book chat with Bill from Nairobi, and he loved it, and he got me more interested in it. And then I bought the audiobook because it was like $7 or something, and I'm listening to that for Pride Month. I'm really enjoying it. I don't know how far I am, but a fair ways in, like an hour or so in, or maybe 2 hours in. The protagonist is a hoot. She has serious, I think, neurotic issues rather than psychiatric issues, but I don't know. She's convinced she's dying. She's a hypochondriac. She has a lot of anxiety and certain interpersonal issues, but it's presented in such a humorous way, and I adore her, and she's also basically a good person. So for example, she picks up a brochure that's offering free counseling if you go to this address, and it's some church bullshit, like there's no counseling. And somehow she gets into a conversation not with the pastor at that fundamentalist church, but I think across the street or next door or something. And he's a Catholic priest, and he says, "Oh, you're here for the job interview," and she is an atheist and a lesbian. She said, and he said, "Oh, that's great. You're much younger than the last lady who died of old age, and I don't even know how to turn the computer on." And he asked her a couple of really bizarre questions about herself, nothing about work experience or anything, but just kind of comical, way out of left field questions, and says, "You've got the job." And she's thinking, well, I'm an atheist lesbian. If he knew that, he probably wouldn't want me here, but I really need money, so she takes the job. Because he literally doesn't know how to turn it on. And she gets the computer running on her first day, and the previous church assistant who had died, she was about 70, there's a whole bunch of emails for her that are of a personal nature, and saying, "Are you okay? I haven't heard from you for a few weeks. I hope everything's okay." And that just, I guess it would bother anybody, but it causes so much anxiety, that's presented in such a humorous way about our protagonist, because she's trying to figure out how to write a reply to say that this woman is dead, passed away, gone to be with her maker, gone home. So she might think she's just at home, and it's presented so hilariously. So I don't know where it's going, but I am already connected with the protagonist and enjoying it very much. So that is going very well. Last night I finished this very quirky, wonderful novella from the UK, With or Without Angels, by Douglas Bruton. And this was a pseudo-buddy read with Lindy. We taped our Zoom chat this morning, so it's going to go up, I don't know, it'll probably be a month or so before you see it, but we had a wonderful chat about it, And if you're interested in art and the process of art making and creativity, ekphrasis, if you're interested in reading a non-sentimental story about love and inspiration and mortality, what a beautiful work of literature this is. So stay tuned for that chat. I will leave it very brief. There's beautiful illustrations in here, and as I've explained in recent Friday Reads, the premise is that an elderly artist who, because of health issues and advanced age, is no longer able to paint, gets the idea of doing something with photography, and he engages the services and the assistance of a younger photographer. They make art together about his favorite painting from his youth, which is a Venetian painting called The New World, Il Nuovo Mondo, I believe, by Tiepolo, the younger, not the older. I'll put it on the screen just for a moment so you can see it. So that's a true story. That work of photographic art does exist. There's 11 photographs. And then that Scottish artist died a few years ago. And then this guy, Douglas Bruton, was so inspired by the story that he's written a fictional novella about all of that. It's just wonderful. Unfortunately, this was a bail for me. The Emperor's Orphans by Sally Ito. This is a memoir of her Japanese and Japanese-Canadian family. And it was well written, and it was quite engaging, and it was holding my interest despite certain longer passages that I thought were kind of mundane. Can I just skip over this? Just detailed description of a road trip the whole family makes across Canada? Maybe not, I'll keep going. But what did me in, and I can't remember how far I got into it, but at least 30, maybe 40%, was that there are excerpts from family memoirs that other members of the family have written, and there are also passages of Sally Ito imagining the women writing their own story, but they didn't. And so much of that, which the further I got into the memoir, the longer those excerpts became, were rendered in about 2, maybe 3 different, just horrific italic fonts, and I cannot stand reading italic fonts. It's just it's the worst thing in the world for me. Like, I literally have trouble reading it. It hurts my eyes. And the longer they got, I just thought, you know what, I can't. I just can't. If this was on audiobook, I would happily continue. But any italic font is horrible. But let me just show you. Look at this. Now, you and I might be very different, and you would have no trouble reading that, but I just hate fonts like that. All right, as is often my dilemma when I'm filming out here with this little mic, the wind protector thing on top is a little bit, it's a little bit loose, and it keeps falling off, and it's very easy if a breeze catches it to blow away, and it's right down there, and I'm gonna have to physically stand up and bend over and pick it up, and these are not things I do very easily. There it is. I managed to wedge it between my heels and raise my heels so I didn't have to get up. Yeah, this is the best part of the vlog, I bet. And finally, this is one of the books I've started this week. It's going to be all I can do to not read this to you from page 1 to the end. It's so good. It's The Last Englishman, The Life of J.L. Carr by Byron Rogers, and it's a biography of J.L. Carr, obviously, the author of A Month in the Country, one of my favorite works of literature. And I don't know anything about Byron Rogers, but I will read anything this man writes. He's such a beautiful writer, and he started out as a journalist interviewing J.L. Carr, but they took a liking to one another and they became friendly for many years until J.L. Carr died in about 1990 something. J.L. Carr was so incredibly eccentric and fascinating and secretive, and oh my God, there's just, you can't get over the things that were true about this man. He never really let anybody, including his own wife, who said, I've been married to him for years and I don't really feel like I know him. So he's a very private, secretive person. I don't think he had any dark secrets. Maybe he did, but he was affable and he could be charming. And he, over a lifetime, just did so many things, from being a school headmaster to a writer, starting his own small publishing press, which is still going. I guess it's his son who's keeping it going, where all of his books are in print, and county maps, and he was an illustrator, and he just did everything, and he was just an odd little man. I mean, he was so secretive that he when he moved to Kettering, I think I've got this right. When he moved to Kettering from wherever he was from before that, he switched from Methodism to the Church of England because he liked the church architecture better, and he didn't tell his own brother that he'd converted for decades afterwards. Like, he was just like that. So that people showed up at his funeral, and he just had so many compartmentalized aspects of his life that everybody was kind of looking at each other saying, who are these people? I think this is going to be a really entertaining, fascinating read. I've just read the first 20 pages, and this is a buddy read with Heidi of My Reading Life. Oh my God! And what a beautiful writer Byron Rogers is. Let's look here. He writes for the Sunday Telegraph, Guardian, and Saga magazine. He had 2 previous books, An Audience with an Elephant and The Green Lane to Nowhere. And this book is fairly old, so he's probably, hopefully, written more than that. This was published in 2003. That's all I have time to say. My mom is picking me up in a few minutes and taking me over to her house. I have to help her set up her new laser printer, and then we're going to have a barbecue. I'm here with my mom, Helen. Mom's going to tell us about a mystery series she's been reading for some years. What's it all about, Mom?
I've been reading the series of the Seven Sisters, which is a star constellation, Pleiades, that's right. And the series was written by Lucinda Riley. She started writing the series in about 2013. It's all about how a wealthy millionaire adopted 6 daughters from all around the world and raised them on a really beautiful place called Atlantis. Anyway, the series has a sister, each one of the 6 sisters that he adopted. So there was 6 books. The first one was Maya, the second one was the Storm Sister, then there was the Pearl Sister, the Moon Sister. I've forgotten the other 2. And we don't ever know throughout the whole 7 books who Pa Salt is. That's the man that adopted all the daughters. The last one is called The Missing Sister, and it's quite an interesting mystery as to how that last daughter was found. He didn't adopt her. Anyway, so the last book, the 8th book, is called Atlas, and this is when we find out who Pa Salt was and why he adopted the 6 girls that he did, and then who the 7th one was. And so it's a mystery. I can't hardly put it down. I read it for 2 hours today trying to figure out what's going on. Now, Lucinda Riley, the author, Irish, yes. She died in 2021 in June after she'd finished the 7th book. And so...
She wasn't very old.
No, she wasn't very old. She was only in her 50s. She was only about 52 or 3. But she had done a consultation with her son, Harry. And so Harry has finished the last book for her and tells all the secrets of who Pa Salt was and his life. But anyway, I've loved the series. It's kind of historical because each one of the sisters goes back to where they came from and the history of the place. So, yeah.
Is each book a mystery?
Yes, because each book is a mystery of where each daughter finds out where she came from originally, where he adopted. Mystery. Yeah, that.
Not a murder mystery.
No, not a murder mystery. No. But a mystery of each daughter's roots, and they came from, the first one was from Brazil, and the next one was from Australia. Another one was New York, came from the States. One was from New Zealand. And then the roots, and there's quite a bit of history about, it goes back like the girl that came from Ireland, It goes right back to 1916 when the uprising. Yeah, and so there's quite a bit of history about the uprising as in that book.
And they're adopted by a man, and does that man raise them and live in Ireland?
No, they're raised in Switzerland. They came from Switzerland. Yeah, and they're raised, but he's hired it's a French nanny that they have and they call her Ma. And then there's a cook, Claudia, and she's German. And it's an island that they're raised on, and so they go back and forth to the mainland. The staff, the fellow that runs the jetty that goes back and forth, his name is Christian, and they appear in all of it. Like Ma raised the girls, well, Pa was doing, I don't know, Pa was off and on. And we'll find out in this last book how he made his millions and why he raised them. And
so you're reading the very last one, and it's written by the son. Is it as good as the others?
It is. Oh. But it refers back to each girl, like where she came from. So it's woven all through it. It's all woven into that book. Yeah.
That's great.
How Pa Salt spent time in each one of those countries. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Well, thanks for telling us about it, Mom.
The Seven Sisters series.
All right, here's where the bench used to be. Look how much room there is for at least 2 benches there. Still no answer from them. Okay, here it is, Monday. I've got some reading done today, but not as much as I wanted. Story of my life. I've got a few books more to check in about, and the thunderstorm is supposed to hit any minute now. And I would have filmed it on the balcony because I was actually quite pleased with how that looked. My Friday reads that was on the balcony with the grey background with sunlight coming in. I thought it all rather worked well together. Not that it's gonna become my regular spot, but I would have gone out there. But I thought my next door neighbor either died, which isn't very nice for me to be happy about, or moved out, because he hasn't been out sitting on his balcony all spring. And suddenly now he's back. He's a weird guy. Like, he's not dangerous, I don't think. But he just sits out there, and he looks like a hermit, and he just stares at everybody that is outside. Like, he makes my mum nervous when my mum parks in my parking spot, and he looks down and yesterday he was hanging over the balcony staring at her when she was sitting in her car. Like, it's just weird. So he makes me really uncomfortable, and I will not film on my balcony when I know he's out there. And I did just go out. The only way I can check is to go downstairs and walk out to the front of the building and look up, and yet sure enough he's there. So he's always there. I think he was away or maybe in hospital. Who knows where he was. But he was gone for a long time. And that's why I filmed my Friday reads up there. But I've heard via the grapevine that he might be moving out. So anyway, so I'm inside. I'm going to talk about this one even though I don't feel I quite have enough of a grasp on it to say whether I'm going to like it or not. Coral Glynn by Peter Cameron. I previewed the first 5 pages or something when I did my library book vlog. And I really like those first 5 pages. Now that I've read about 15 more, I think I'm going to like it, but I'm not sure. So it's about this somewhat young nurse that comes to an old lady's house in the boonies in the UK, and she's dying. And she has an eccentric bachelor son living in the house who has a war injury and seems very secretive. Well, by about page 15, it was obvious that he was gay or had a gay relationship in his youth, that he was still friends with the guy, but nothing else was going on. That's all I know about this story. I'm now at, spoiler alert, by page 20, the old lady dies, and that's where I'm at. It's interesting. I think I like the writing. I need to keep reading it. Peter Cameron is hit and miss for me. The Weekend, I've read twice, and I still can't remember very much about it. I read it, 20 years ago and then 15 years ago. I liked it at that time. I should reread it again. But then I read a novella of his that I thought was pretty awful. Andorra. I didn't like it at all, and I'm reading Coral Glynn because Thomas, formerly of the Readers, told me to. and I hope I like it, to stay in Thomas's good books. But I know that he liked Andorra, so he might be more of a Peter Cameron fan than I am. But no, this is definitely holding my interest. Just not quite sure, haven't read enough to have much of an opinion yet. I have no such qualms about how much I'm enjoying these other two. Ma and Me by Putsata Rang. This is a memoir of a Cambodian-American lesbian, or perhaps bisexual, and her Cambodian-American mother. And I don't know, there's something about this kind of a memoir that I thought, doesn't actually sound all that interesting. I was wrong. It's really interesting. I'm doing it mostly on audio, but I'm so glad I have the book with the beautiful dust jacket. It's really holding my interest. So it's this conflictual relationship in that the author's mother never could quite accept her being queer, but otherwise they had a pretty good relationship. And the mom is at the end of at the stage of life where she wants to unburden herself of some family secrets, and so that is the premise of the memoir, and it is really interesting. I'm glad that I'm reading it so close on the heels of After Parties by Anthony Vesna-Snow, because that immersed me to a certain degree in Cambodian culture, and this is going to take me, I expect, even deeper by the end. I like the writing, and it's just really, really interesting. So this so far is a big hit. And finally, I had qualms at the very beginning, and then I got over myself with this debut novel from the UK. Small Joys by Elvin James Mensah. Content warning for suicide attempt coming up in the next moment or two of my description of this novel. If that's not something you want to hear anything about, I don't go into any detail other than the fact that it occurs. Skip ahead to the next book. And it's not a spoiler because it's in the first 1 to 2 pages that the protagonist makes kind of a fumbly, inane suicide attempt. And he just kind of does it outside of the share house that he used to live in, and now he's quit university in the big city, and he's come home and he's got a new room in the same share house, and he just kind of almost unconsciously walks out into a wooded area across the street from the share house and tries to take his life. And he is rescued by one of his new flatmates that he doesn't know. And then I'm assuming their relationship is going to become central to the novel. But I really do have a pet peeve about, I've tried to say it kind of humorously before, when I don't like buy me dinner first. Don't immerse me in a tragedy in the first chapter, and especially at the very opening of a book. Buy me dinner first. Let me get to know the characters. And I have bailed on books that did this to me before, but I'm so glad that I didn't bail, because by the end of the first chapter I was hooked. It is weird that that's the way the book started, but that's the way the book started, and I'm over it. And I am loving meeting the characters that live in this share house. And they are so well drawn, and this has such rich dialogue. It's a group of mixed race, white and black British characters living in the share house. All of their personalities are crystal clear to me, and I've read 2 chapters. And I care about them, and I'm really drawn to the gay black main character. It's ironic that a novel entitled Small Joys starts with a suicide attempt, but it does, and then quickly moves on to other things. And I'm assuming the mental health of the protagonist is going to be an ongoing issue in the story. The title suggests that it's not going to end in tragedy. I hope I'm right. Really quite beautiful writing and rich character work. All right, that's what I got for now. In 20 minutes, I'm teaching on Zoom for 2 hours, and then I'll maybe do some more reading or some more video editing. More tomorrow. All right, here I'm on the university campus, and just before I start telling you stuff, I want to talk to Greg on Voxer. Hello, Greg. This is Sean from the University of Saskatchewan campus. How are you doing? I just wanted to say hello and tell you that you need to come and visit me in Saskatoon and see this beautiful campus where not only I went, but my mother, Two of my grandmothers and my father all graduated from this university, and it's also the place that made me gay. So there's many reasons for you to come here. I have some questions for you. What is the first line of the book you're reading? You can choose to tell us the title and author if you wish, but you don't have to tell us that if it's really confidential. Today, is it boxers, briefs, or commando? Inquiring minds want to know. And number 3, what is the last book you borrowed from the library? Talk about scandalous questions. Let's see if he answers. I'm here for a couple of reasons. I have to pick up some prescription refills. This is where I deal with. My pharmacy is here because it's only one bus without transfers to come to this pharmacy compared to any other any other pharmacy that I might deal with. And I just love coming here for any excuse will do. I've got to return some books and renew some books, and I'll probably have some footage of that. So in terms of the books, I'm going to talk about 2 books that I'm going to check in about. One of them I'm returning today, and that is this collection of gay short stories by a gay American writer. Letters from a Great Uncle and Other Stories by Richard Hall. Published way back in the 80s, I think, or early 90s. Maybe originally 1970. Oh, listen.
I hope you're enjoying your day exploring the campus. I think I've mentioned you, I know I've mentioned you recently actually, that I would love to visit more of Canada, so hopefully someday we can work that out because you make a compelling case. And in terms of your questions, okay. What is the first line of the book you're reading? Okay. I'm pulling it up right now. It is Stone Butch Blues by Leslie Feinberg, which I think we've talked about briefly. You mentioned you have not read it, and I am currently finally getting around to it. There's a lot of stuff in the beginning, so I'm flipping and not finding the beginning. Here we go. Dear Teresa, I'm lying on my bed tonight missing you, my eyes all swollen, hot tears running down my face. That is the first line. I think that's all you said, so I guess I should stop there. Your next question, boxers, briefs, or commando? Actually, boxer briefs. So there you go. And then what is the last book you borrowed from the library? I actually have 3 books out from the library at the moment, and I do not remember which one of them I checked out first. I believe I checked at least 2 of them out at the same time. One of them is Different for Boys by Patrick Ness. That is the only one that I have read so far. I also have When We Were Sisters by Fatima Asghar, which was the winner of the Carol Shields Prize, and a graphic novel called Wash Day Diaries. All of which are part of my Pride Month reading, and I've only gotten to the Patrick Ness so far, but want to do Wash Day Diaries and When We Were Sisters. So there you go. Hope you're doing well.
Oh, how fabulous. A little bit of that got cut out or whatever because a woman walking by thought I was filming this direction, not me. And so I said, oh, no. Until she stopped. I'm having that trouble. Never had that issue when I film at my iPad, but with my iPhone, just the second time in the last week that's been an issue. So anyhow, so a lovely check-in from Greg. I'm not going to ask for photographic proof of what he's wearing for underwear today, but at least now we know. The first copyright here is 1977, and there's 2 more after that, so I don't know what that means, but it's fairly old gay literature. And I have now read the first story, the title story. It's 40 pages. Letter from a Great Uncle, and I really thought it was great. I've had it out for 3 months and only now gotten to the first story, so I'm returning it today, and I've bought myself a used copy that'll be coming in the mail in the next week because I can tell already it's a book that I want to have on my shelf. Letter from a Great Uncle is about a gay American man, maybe in the 70s or don't know, probably something like that, the 70s, and he has fond memories of a great uncle that really took a shine to him, that was a bachelor, and he found out years later was a homosexual, was a gay man, and that man died in 1936. And one of the last times that he saw the protagonist, it's kind of the protagonist of the Frame story. The kid was only 10 years old, but his great uncle said, I think we have a lot in common. Someday I'll tell you the story of my life. And then within a few years he got sick and died, but he did leave a letter for his grandnephew. If ever he sought it out, there was a letter waiting for him with a cousin. And by fluke, well, kind of by design, but kind of by fluke, he did get a chance to read the letter when he, who had been 10 years old, was in his 40s or 50s, I think. And the letter is the story of his life. And how horrifically this great uncle had been persecuted when he was a young man growing up in Texas in around the turn of the century, or even at the end of the 19th century, and where he was committed to an insane asylum to get treatments to cure him of his homosexuality, and where when his father caught him masturbating, oh my God, they put a shackle on him at night for the next several months so he couldn't touch himself, and just horrible stuff. But really well told in a simple manner. I mean, the only complexity was that it was a story within a story in this epistolary form. I thought it was powerful. So I'm looking forward to reading more of the stories in this collection when I get my own copy in the mail. Certainly would recommend it on the basis of that title story. The other book I'm going to check in about today is one that I started the week before last, and that is Isabelle and Emile by Alan Reed, and he's a Montreal Anglophone writer who I'd never heard of, but the cover just kind of captivated me at the used bookstore. Oh, there's some hot men. I think campus is not in session, so there's not that many people wandering around, but that's the second hottie I've seen in the last 10 minutes. This is a very strange novel. I remember telling you that it's written in a... Well, here's what... I'm going to read you a section because the prose is really weird. Not the rhythm of the prose. And it's been decades since I read any of Gertrude Stein's prose, but if my memory is serving me, it's a little bit like that. I mean, it's simple prose, but the rhythm of it and the way that the repetitive patterning of the prose, it's not as challenging like most experimental fiction, but it's odd. Emile of the title has left the small town or farm or whatever, I think small town, where he was living with a woman. I presume it's his wife, but I don't know for sure. And he gets on the train and goes to the big city. We find out that he used to live in that city and he's returned. And I don't know if it's because of a separation or he's going there for work. Nothing is spelled out. It's all very opaque. So the first thing he does is go to a bar, and it seems like he knew that bar, and he's meeting somebody there who we find out within a page or two had been and now will be his roommate. I don't know if was or is going to be more than his roommate. I might be putting a gay gloss on what I'm reading, but just a sample of the prose. So here is Emile sitting at the bar, nursing a gin and tonic, waiting for his friend to arrive for his shift as a bartender at this bar. There is a straw in Emile's gin and tonic. It is pressed up against the side of the glass. The ice in the drink is holding it there. He touches the straw with his finger. It moves slightly. He touches his finger against the straw again. It moves again. It does not move as much. It does not move as much because the ice does not move. He presses harder. The straw does not move. He wants the straw to move. It is frustrating. Emile presses against the straw so that it moves around the ice. The ice moves. The straw moves forward. It does not move forward very far. He was away from the city. Now he is back in the city. He walked down the street to get here. He did not remember what it was like to walk down the street here. He needs to make sense of it. He is going to make the straw move to the other side of the glass. It will help him to make sense of it. He is bent over the glass. So the camera turned around. He is bent over his glass. He is concentrating. The door to the bar opens. Nicholas comes into the bar. Emile does not hear the door open. He is bent over his glass. Nicholas moves easily. He looks older than Emile. He looks more confident. Nicholas says, "Emile?" Emile's head jerks up. He is very young. He turns around on his stool. He looks around the bar. He sees Nicholas. Nicholas is wearing a fancy scarf. He wears it like he is very pleased that it is a fancy scarf. Emile says, "Nicholas." He stands up slowly. He is smaller than Nicholas. He does not stand as straight. Nicholas walks over to where Emile is. He opens his arms. He hugs Emile. Nicholas says, "It's good to see you." Emile says, "It is good to see you too." So there is a mundanity and a repetitiveness to the prose that is kind of hypnotic. I mean, there's certain passages where I think, oh my God, can we just tell me what's something important that happens? Because when it's really mundane, it kind of loses me. But most of it I find hypnotic in a way that, is it Steinian? Am I remembering her prose correctly? Looking forward to your comments. The last thing I'll say today is I caught up to the end of the second chapter. I'll put the cover gif up. I didn't think to bring the book to campus, but the J.L. Carr biography, so that I could check in a day late with Heidi from My Reading Life, who I'm buddy reading this with, and we're both thought the first 2 chapters plus the foreword were stunning. And one of the weird and wonderful things about the way that he's telling us about J.L. Carr's family of origin, because sometimes those parts of a biography are really dry and boring, and he's making it anything but. And part of it is that at the time that he wrote the biography, I think J.L. Carr died in the early 80s, didn't he? I forget, but he had been dead a few years. But his older brother, Ray Carr, was still alive at the age of 95 and way beyond sharp as a tack. He just had this memory made of steel, and he never forgot anything. And he wrote a memoir that was never published that J.L. Carr worshipped. And I don't know why he didn't publish it. For all I know, it's been published since the biography was written, but apparently it's just a wonderful set of memoirs. And one of the stories, J.L. Carr's older brother, Ray, at the age of 95, it's in the memoir, or he tells the biographer, I don't know, but he was a lifelong railway man. And unlike his father, his and J.L. Carr's father, Ray Carr was not ambitious. So once he got a job at a certain outpost, he didn't ever leave. And his father kept berating him to get on with things, seek a promotion, seek another posting, work your way up. And he didn't ever do that. He stayed there until they closed that railway station, and then he bought it and lived there for the rest of his life. So he's just a really odd duck. J.L. Carr was an odd duck, but this anecdote is about Ray. So apparently in the memoir, among hundreds, scads and scads of fascinating anecdote, one is that there was lots of parcels and things that were moving on the train, and he had to look after all of those, including coffins of deceased people and livestock and all manner of stuff that was transported on the train. One day, there was a prize-winning race cat. Have I got that right? Yes, it was a race cat, a cat that was going to participate in some national cat race. And it went through his station, and he felt a little sorry for it, and he remembered that in the cat, whatever they transport cats in, there's the crate, and inside the crate is a cage. And so he just wanted to open it to make sure the cat was all right and maybe give it some water or whatever. But there was no cage inside, so he opened it, and the cat shot out and was never found again. And Ray Carr was freaking out. Oh my God, what do I do? Because this was like a famous prize-winning race cat. And so there's a couple stray cats at the train station, and he puts one in, and he just hopes for the best, packages it all up, sends it off to London or wherever it was going, and never heard another word. So in other words, he didn't get into trouble. And maybe that stray cat from his outpost of a railway station won the race. But I just love that story so much, and that's kind of the flavor of the whole biography so far. Just chock full of curious anecdotal goodies like that. So really enjoying it. All right, time to go to the library. All right, it's Wednesday, and I am parked my butt outside the branch library here in Saskatoon. That's a 10-minute walk from my house. I could have sat on a bench on the walk here, but the clouds overhead are so ominous, and they're calling for heavy thunderstorm, that I thought I'd better wait till I get to this picnic bench right outside the library in case I have to make a mad dash in with my library books. If this outdoor presentation gets rained out, I'll finish it at home later today. I am returning 4 books. I'm just going to show 3 of them to you very quickly, and then I'm going to wrap up the 4th one. I got this from the library, The Birthday Party by Laurent Mauvignier, maybe? Translated from the French by Daniel Levin Becker, and this is the American edition by Transit Books, which actually has a beautiful cover, unlike those horribly, embarrassingly boring covers that come from the UK, but we won't get into that. I requested it, came in, and there's the new sticker. So no option to renew, and I'm very busy reading Pride stuff in June, so I wouldn't have had a chance to start it. It's going back. I'll probably buy a copy, because it's supposed to be absolutely wonderful. This was the memoir, The Emperor's Orphans by Sally Ito, that I bailed on. And this is Friends in Dark Shapes by Kavita Beckford, which I have very recently reviewed. I'll put a link to that review in the show notes. And I have just a few hours ago finished reading this. It's a really heavy book. It's probably the most awkward book to kind of display when I'm holding a mic with one hand and I'm outside. But let's go for it. The Ecological Buffalo, On the Trail of a Keystone Species. Text is by Wes Olson, and Johan Janelle, I believe that's his partner in life, is the photographer. I'm giving it 5 stars because of the photographs, and because I was so hungry for any information about the buffalo. If you're more scientifically orientated, you can call it bison, but if you don't care about science, which I don't really, if you're more interested in culture, and especially indigenous culture, buffalo is what it's called. There is a scientific taxonomic thing that is really unimportant to me. I just enjoy this in spite of certain weaknesses, and really I shouldn't say weaknesses. Some of it was that it was very limited to an ecological perspective. I'm still starved for information about cultural, indigenous, historical stuff, and there's very little of that here, but it's rich in detail about how the buffalo was a keystone species, which is like the species that enables a whole web of species to flourish in an ecosystem. And the buffalo was in North America, and it was all but eradicated in the late 19th century, especially the plains, the prairie, where I'm speaking to you from. Our environment has been impoverished as a result. I would have liked to read more about the rewilding things that are going on. It didn't occur to me to read the foreword until I don't usually read forewords at all, or not until after. But I'm glad that I did, was it the foreword or the preface? Anyway, one of them talked about how there are reserves or populations of buffalo in national parks, and I think some provincial parks in Canada and the United States, as well as on indigenous land, for conservation purposes, to keep the species, to grow, to increase the population of the species. But for the plains buffalo, there's almost none that are in the wild that aren't in a fenced-in environment. The wood bison up north, there's quite a few that have been reintroduced or otherwise live in the wild. But I hope that rewilding continues, and I'm actually really excited about it, and I want to read more and even go out into the real world. I've never seen a buffalo, have I? I must have when I was a kid, but just fascinating animals, and the stuff I learned, the photographs about the millions of species that derive their sustenance from buffalo poop, buffalo patties. What are they called? Buffalo patties. And there's a lot of photographs of the patties, and that didn't gross me out, but I didn't really love the photo of a buffalo pooping out a patty, watching it come out. I didn't really need to see that. Similarly, when a buffalo dies, all the animals that are sustained by its corpse, and there was photos of of the decaying corpse of buffaloes that I didn't really care to see. But otherwise, the photographs are beautiful, just sumptuous, and the information is really interesting. And this is not a beautifully written book. It's not inaccessible. It's not scientific in the way that's off-putting. It's just not sentences that roll trippingly off the tongue. But I don't really care. It was a 5-star read because I learned so much, and it's whetted my appetite to read a lot more. I will hold the book up and show some of the pictures when I'm at home. It'll be a lot easier to do that. Oh, no, I can't. Yes, I have to do that right now. So I will do a B track. Is that what you call it? A B video? B track? To show you some of the pictures. I won't show the gross pictures while I've been talking here. I recommend it. Oh, the other thing that I didn't like is it's a soft cover this size. Look up beside my head. And it's floppy, and it's really almost too heavy to have on my lap. Certainly doesn't fit in my gay bookmobile book cart beside my chair. I think it should have been hardcover, although that would have still made it. I don't know. It's a coffee table book, and so it comes with all of those cumbersome issues. But I thought it was incredible in so many ways. All right, so this is virtually the end of my vlog. I'm going out of town this weekend, so I knew my Friday Reads was going to be abbreviated, and so I've done the best I could to catch up with the books that I've recently started. I didn't cover all of them, and I don't have time, and you don't have time to watch all that, but most of them. After this, I'm going to show you the new release section of the library when I drop these books when I give these books back. Other than that, you've seen the library, and then I'm going to the bookstore, McNally's. I'm going to go on the bus just because it looks like it's going to rain, and I've kind of got a busy few hours here. Sharon Butala is launching her novel, Leaving Wisdom, on Friday night here in Saskatoon at McNally's, and I'm going to be out of town. So I'm going to buy 2 copies, and they will get them signed and inscribed to Mum and me. It's a birthday present for Mum and a present for myself. But unfortunately, I'm going to miss Sharon Butala, but we had such a good conversation about the book. And then I'll show you that bookstore a little bit.
Okay, perfect. So this card is yours, and then the little card and the big card have the exact same number on it. So you can bring just one of them, or if you have a phone, you can take a picture of it, whichever is easier for you. And it should be dry already. It should already be good. I'll pass this up to you as well. That has some information about.
All right, let's find 5 bales, and then I'm out of here. Bale. Bale. Vomit bale. 2 more. Bale. 1 more. Bale.